It's ironic I'm giving this speech today to survivors when after this I'm heading over to the ER. My doctor thinks I'm there already, and I'm not. So I'm not going without doing this speech. For those of you who have heard the story, I apologize, we're going to run through it again. My name is Pam. I'm the 45-year-old wife and mother of 2 girls, 6 and 4. I thought for sure cancer wasn't going to get me, that my kids will. They will kill me. I am 16 days away from my 1-year anniversary of my diagnosis of stage 3 nasopharyngeal carcinoma. It's on May 10th of last year, one day before Mother's Day, that my life changed forever. My children's lives changed forever. My husband's life changed forever. Nasopharyngeal carcinoma, or NPC, is an extremely rare cancer. 1 in every 100,000 people in a westernized country get this cancer. However, it is most prevalent in the Asian part of the world. It is their breast cancer, if you will, or their heart disease. Nasopharyngeal carcinoma entitled me to have a tumor in my nasal passage that just happened to be pressing up against my brain. I ultimately spent a majority of 2014 in Bayonne Medical Center. I spent over 100 days and nights spent in a room on the 3rd floor. I had only one symptom of this cancer. Starting around January of 2014, I totally lost all hearing in my left ear. Having 2 children that were school age, I naturally thought it was an ear infection from them. Apparently, so did my doctors and my ENT as well. Over the course of several weeks, both my primary care doctor and my ENT doctor pondered on what was going on with me, and both prescribed me antibiotics and anti-inflammatories to no avail. I had a follow-up appointment with my ENT scheduled for May 8th of 2014, which worked out great since May 7th, on my way home from work, I was driving and I literally heard a pop in my head, as if a balloon popped in my head. Next thing you know, I have double vision in my left eye. As I was approaching the toll booth at 16W, I realized I can see 3 toll booths. Which one is the one I'm not supposed to crash into? Which one is the one I'm supposed to keep driving and pay my toll? Well, I put my hand over my left eye, finally got to the correct toll booth, thank goodness, drove all the way home with my one eye covered and my hazard lights on. As the night grew longer, so did my fear, and a severe headache ensued. The next day was my follow-up appointment with my ENT. The appointment couldn't come soon enough. I was in so much pain and I couldn't see. My husband and I got to the ENT, and he put the scope up my nose and down my throat, if any of you are familiar with that. And there it is. The doctor actually hits my tumor with his scope. I was told, all right, so you're going to go home, you're going to say goodbye to your girls, and you're going to meet me at St. Barnabas Livingston Hospital. You're probably going to have emergency brain surgery tonight. You can imagine what was going through my mind. What? Brain surgery? I have 2 little girls. You're asking me to say goodbye to my kids. At that time, going home and saying goodbye to my girls was what I thought would be the hardest thing I would ever have to do in my life. Little did I know what I was in for over the next 7 months. I'm not sure anyone diagnosed with cancer knows exactly what they're in for. The next 7 months was purgatory for me, as well as my family. It was pure hell. There's only one treatment for this type of cancer. It didn't matter whether I was in Sloan Kettering or in New York or Bayonne, I was going to get the exact same treatment. Staying in Bayonne Medical Center was the best option for me. After all, I have 2 small children. How is my husband going to drag them to New York City? The first order of business was getting a feeding tube put into my stomach, of which was just recently removed. Yay. Second order of business was a port that is directly attached to my heart for my medication and chemotherapy treatments. As of 11 months later, I still have that one foreign object in my body. On Tuesday, May 27, 2014, I was admitted into Bayonne Hospital to begin what would be the fight of my life. 1 week on as an inpatient of 5 days, 24 hours a day of chemo, then 2 weeks off, then 5 days on again, 2 weeks off, and so on and so on. When that was all over, I would enter 35 radiation treatments every day, Monday through Friday, for 7 weeks, wearing a mesh mask over my face and my head, and tied and locked to a table. We'll get back to that radiation later on. My first week of treatment, I wish somebody would have warned me of what to expect, but then again, every patient handles treatment differently. I had the biggest room with 3 beds in it. I was alone. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone, except for the thousands of bees and spiders I thought were crawling on the walls. Hallucinations. No one warned me of these. No one warned me that my entire life was going to pass through my eyes, and this was only the first day of treatment. I saw pictures in my head of people I knew, some who are no longer with me, some I've never met before, so immediately I began to think of only two things. Are these people I'm going to meet in my lifetime when I beat cancer, or are these people that I will meet when I die in the next few days and pass over into the next life? These are the questions that would haunt me while in treatment. Someone once told me very early on in the beginning of my journey that cancer is a battle of mental wits and not so much physical. It's 80% mental, 20% physical, and I tend to agree. The mental anguish I went through was something I wish no one ever has to experience. This truly was a mental pain for me, and it still is. As for my first week of treatment, I went in on a Tuesday and was released on a Sunday, and on that Monday, an ambulance was called to my home. My eyes had rolled back in the back of my head, and I lost total consciousness and passed out on my then 3-year-old. Had my husband not been home, I would have crushed her and I would have suffocated her to death. I spent the next 5 days in the hospital missing my eldest daughter's graduation from pre-K. Something you never get over is missing these important milestones in your children's lives. But I was advised that there would be many, many more milestones, and I need to get better to experience them all. This is what gave me the strength. My doctor explained to my husband that a man double the size of me would not have been able to handle my treatment because it was so aggressive. After all, NPC is an aggressive cancer and needs to be treated as such. Shortly into my treatment, my husband created t-shirts with the words Team Pams scrolled across them, one for me, my husband, and my children. After all, we are a team. On the back of the shirts was a phrase, make each day your masterpiece, a phrase that became my family mantra, a phrase we still live by today. After only 3 days of my first chemo treatment, my hair started to come out, the first sign of undergoing cancer treatment, the inevitable hair coming out. I learned I was not as attached to my hair as I thought I would be. I cried, but not nearly as much. I was eerily calm when it happened, but it was surreal. As a family, we ultimately made the decision together, or rather my girls did, that they wanted to go to the beauty salon, and Mommy was getting a boy's haircut. Having had hair down to my butt all my life, you can imagine how traumatic that was. I woke up the next morning, and still, hair was all over my bed sheets and pillow. I looked at my husband, and we made another hair decision. We're going to shave Mommy's hair completely off as a family. Being survivors yourselves, you know all too well that cancer does not give you too many chances to control something. So you take whatever chance you get to control it, and you run with it, knock it out of the ballpark. Later that day, we cranked some music, poured a little bit glasses of wine, and as my family, my husband and my 2 little girls, all took a turn and shaved my head. Yes, we handed a 5- and a 3-year-old a razor. It was awesome, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. In fact, I encourage everyone to shave their heads just once for the hell of it. It's liberating, at least for me it was. Shortly after my first week of treatment, my hair shaving event, a friend of mine made a Facebook page and called it Team Pam. Ultimately, this page became a saving grace for me. With over 500 people in the page, I had more than enough people pulling for me and praying for me. I had people from all over the world rooting for me, Britain, Spain, Wales, Germany. Most notably were my friends from England, who I call the Royals. The last time I saw them was 10 years ago. We met on a drunken trip in Mexico. We've been best friends ever since. They held a fundraiser for me and sent us money for Christmas gifts, as both my husband and I were out of work since May 8th. The one thing that a cancer patient needs for sure is support. One cannot conquer this alone. It becomes a group effort. Sadly though, throughout my treatment, for as many people have joined me in my efforts to fight like hell, several have decided to walk away from me. One thing cancer does is show you exactly who your friends are and who they are not. As my treatment went on, I would lose strength, I battled fatigue, and I still do at this present time. I would become increasingly depressed, and every thought became about death. What would happen to my children? How will my husband cope without me? Will I die in my sleep? Will I know when it's time so that I can say goodbye? That fear of death almost came true on June 29th. After a great morning visit with a very dear friend of mine, it went downhill shortly after he left. It was an entire night battle, either I live or I die. My blood pressure was deathly low, and the nurses couldn't get it up the entire night. I was constantly calling my husband on the phone. He couldn't be with me as we had no sitter. I begged him to stay on the phone with me because I didn't want to die alone. Think about that for a second. You're in the hospital where you should be. You had an amazing visit with a dear friend, and the remainder of the day and night you're fighting for your life, and there isn't a damn thing anybody can do about it. All I could do was cry and beg my husband, please stay on the phone with me. I don't care if you fall asleep. I don't care if I have to listen to you snore. I don't want to die alone. I have never been so scared in my life. Cancer just had to remind me who was in control that day. The morning of June 30th never looked so beautiful. I had made it through the night. I had survived. Listening to my husband snore, but I had survived. I guess it wasn't my time. After that night, the Team Pams support group came in and took over and joined the fight against cancer with me. Somehow, some way, a flash mob was assembled outside of my hospital window. A tiny flash mob, but a flash mob nonetheless. A group of my friends and strangers riding down the block stopped, got out of their cars, and danced under my hospital window. There was also a honk your horn effort for Pam. Several folks over the course of a couple weeks would ride by the hospital and beep. If I could get out of bed, I would, and take a picture of whoever was outside my window. I consider myself very lucky with the amount of support I received. It got me through the saddest and most painful of days for me. Still, I was in the early stages of my treatment, and I was going to need all the support I could get. My continuing treatment rendered me with mouth sores, nausea, insomnia, massive head pain. I wasn't able to eat anything the conventional way. At this point, everything was going through my feeding tube. All the medicines had to be crushed and also put through my feeding tube. The few times I was not in the hospital, my husband was injecting me every 2 hours with shots of Dilaudid, which essentially is synthetic heroin, one of the strongest painkillers you can get. I was in so much pain throughout my battle. Dilaudid became my very best friend. You know you're not in Kansas anymore when your 3-year-old schedules herself to wake up every 2 hours in the middle of the night to hold your hands while Daddy puts a shot of medicine into your arm, kiss you, and then scurry back to bed. All by night, naked, I might add. The 3-year-old, not me. Cancer truly changes the family in all ways possible. Your family will never be the same again. Why should it be, right? A loved one is diagnosed with the most horrendous disease that anyone can imagine. It should change the family. It should change the very core of you. I know it did me. I'm not the same person I was before May 10th. Whether I change for the better or worse is yet to be determined. The next few months were more the same. There was not a week that went by the entire summer I wasn't visiting the ER or being admitted because I was so incredibly sick. On July 21st was the first day of my radiation. Again, no one warned me for what I was about to experience, and I thought chemo was hard. 35 radiation treatments, which entailed my head and face to be covered by a mask and bolted to a table so it rendered me immobile. My radiation coincided with chemotherapy treatments. 2 excruciatingly hard treatments to deal with alone, let alone both at the same time. Nor did any of these treatments stop me from going to the ER. In fact, they upped the ante, one might say. Along with the effects of chemo, new side effects were waiting in the wings to slowly start. The radiation was literally cooking me from the inside out. At one point, I started to feel burning on my face and neck. I went to the mirror to see what was happening, and before my eyes, I watched blisters appear all over my face and ultimately pop right in front of me. Another surreal experience. That for sure is one thing there's no shortage of with cancer, surreal experiences. They're in abundance. Not only was I getting cooked, but the ultimate happened. I had no use of my vocal cords. Now to some, specifically my husband, that very thought of me not being able to speak would have been happening dancing in the streets. For me, it was just another sign of how cancer robs you of everything. By this time, I was completely using my feeding tube. Clearly, eating habits had changed, and I was living off the nutritional shake called Ensure. They're delicious. In fact, I still drink them today. Finally, my radiation treatments ended on September 5th, 2014. In fact, all of my treatment was considered done by the beginning of September. My last chemo session was September 4th. Treatment was finally over. I made it. I even donated the end of treatment bell to the Center for Radiology here in Bayonne Hospital. I rang the bell, received my certificate. I was golden, or so I thought, in the clear, if you will. I was headed on the road to recovery after a battle well fought. Little did I know what the treatment effects were going to do to me over the next few months. I spent the majority of September and October in the hospital. It is these 2 months that I lost 76 pounds. Totally jealous. It's an extreme amount of weight loss in 2 months. The doctors were not thrilled, but by me buying Ivanka Trump designer dresses now, I'm thrilled at the weight loss. See, you need the fat in order to fight off the effects. I was losing mine. Perhaps that is one reason why on a Sunday morning in September, I again almost lost my life. Sadly, right before my husband and girls walked into the hospital room, I took a turn for the worse. The doctor had to tell my family to go wait in the family room until he gives the all clear. It was this critical time that my husband said he saw me at my worst. For a good week or so, I had no idea who I was, where I was, or who I was talking to, and I didn't know who anybody was that came to see me. I had no idea what I was saying and who I was saying it to. I felt completely out of it, and I ended up having a Dilaudid pump attached to me for 2 weeks. Just imagine I can press a button at any time and give myself, and I would be injected with Dilaudid. After I started to become myself again, I decided having that pump was not a good idea for me. I wanted to take it out, and everybody obliged by my request. There were consequences of taking such a strong drug, and believe me, I experienced them all. It's like whatever bad effect cancer could give you, she did. She threw it at me, everything. I'm not sure why I'm referring to cancer as a she, but maybe it's because most women I know are tough in general and will give you a run for your money. And yes, cancer is one tough cookie to face. Even though I finished my treatments in September, I still found myself 5 days a week in my oncologist's office getting hydration. A major issue was hydration. I'm told I fought a battle till the death and I came out on top, but I still remained in the doctor's office 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day getting hydration. Cancer was pissed. Cancer would literally not give up the fight against me to take me to my grave. Finally, on December 10th, exactly 7 minutes to the day that I was first diagnosed with NPC, it all came to a head. I was finally given a word everyone was waiting for. I was finally diagnosed as cancer-free. December 10th was my last day of hydration. I gave up 7 months of my life to go battle with something I had no control over, something that would change my life forever, something that changed my family's life forever. Much like May 10th, the day I was given a diagnosis of cancer, December 10th, the day I was diagnosed as cancer-free, is a day that has changed my life forever, and it warrants me here today as a survivor. When the doctor told me there were no more signs of cancer in any scan I had taken, I felt lost. I felt confused. It wasn't the feeling of jubilation as one would think. I felt the same anxiety that day as I did the day he told me I had cancer. See, for 11 months I had breathed and lived cancer. My calendar was filled with blood tests, biopsies, scans, doctor appointments. Then just like that, it's all gone. You are as mentally unprepared for this diagnosis as you were mentally unprepared for your original cancer diagnosis. It is our job as cancer survivors now to find a new normal, if you will. I'm not sure what my new normal is. As a survivor, I live day by day. I see life in a new light. That's what cancer does. It makes you see things on a more profound level than you ever did before. Things so simple and mundane are all the more beautiful because you fought cancer. Cancer makes you aware of what truly matters in life. It is the weirdest thing. Cancer is the most heinous of diseases, yet it affords us the most beautiful of things. We as survivors notice every little beautiful thing there is to notice. Everything is so more pronounced than it was before we were survivors. Having 2 small children at home, this new way of life is a blessing for me. I can appreciate my children more. I'm not saying I love cancer because I don't. I hate it with all my being, with all that I am. I hate cancer. But I am truly more in love with my life than I was before the diagnosis. I only hope I am around long enough to experience all my children have to offer me. Adjusting to life as a survivor is no small task. People outside this cancer world of ours just don't get it. There are studies out there that say 4 out of 10 cancer patients are plagued by symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Sadly, I'm one of them. After all, I went to hell and back. We all did. As a cancer patient, as well as survivor, I've been called brave, and I am told I'm an inspiration to others. These 2 sentiments I struggle with daily. I wouldn't consider myself brave. I just did what any mom, I think, would do, fight to survive for her kids. I'm just a mom who wants to be there to see my girls graduate. I'm just a mom who wants to be there for wedding dresses and prom dresses, and at the end of the day, I'm just a mom. Life after cancer is not as all easy as one would think. Life is more profound, and it's a big responsibility to make every day my masterpiece. Big responsibility to make my kids' days masterpieces, as well as my husband. After all, it's our family code now. It is written, so it shall be done. 6 weeks ago, I went back to work full-time as an executive assistant, answering phones and checking calendars, and doing all things the big money makers can't do for themselves. I do for them. Very lucky, my coworkers were very supportive, and at the end of the day, I still had a job. One would think after all I've been through, work would be a breeze. On the contrary, while I don't have to battle cancer anymore, our long-lost sister of fatigue has now entered the boxing ring, if you will. My biggest fight is with fatigue. As cancer survivors, I'm sure you all know all too well the amount of energy it takes to do just the simplest of tasks. Cancer's way of always showing you who is the boss. Then there is the depression and flashbacks. I can be sitting at my desk and suddenly it'll flash before my eyes. reliving a procedure or a conversation I had with a nurse or anything that has to do with my cancer. These flashbacks come and go as frequently as I go to the bathroom. As cancer survivors, that's another thing I'm sure you can imagine how many times that is. As for the depression, I can't help but think about the beautiful people I met along the way, those who I call my true friends and dear friends, and those who are no longer with us. Survivor's guilt, perhaps. Cancer will always be with me. Cancer will be with all of us in one way or another. Whether it be our own paranoia to think that every ache in our body must absolutely mean cancer is back, or if you're a person volunteering or you're a caregiver to someone with this dreadful disease, cancer will always make her presence known in one way or another. Funny thing, someone lucky enough not to have cancer invade their world told me that because I no longer have cancer, I need to get over it, and I need to move on. Get over it and move on were her words exactly. Needless to say, I got over her, and I have moved on. It is up to us, the survivors, to pay it forward and rid the world of this beast. Talk to somebody newly diagnosed. Get involved in your community. Go out with your friends. Do anything you need to do to get yourself through the day and get your mind off cancer. That's what she wants. Cancer wants us to fear her every waking hour of the day. We cannot let her win. We can do this. We're all survivors, after all. We can do this. In closing, the words of ESPN sportscaster Stuart Scott just recently passed away from his long battle of appendicitis cancer. He was a huge influence and a huge inspiration on me throughout my battle. When you die, it does not mean that you lose to cancer. You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and in the manner in which you live it. I hope that by me being here today, speaking and continuing the fight against this horrific disease, it shows how I am living, why I am living, and the manner in which I'm living. I will forever be fighting against cancer for myself and for others. I can only hope each and every one of you will join me in this fight and continue to fight until we can find a cure and kick cancer's ass for good. Thank you and be well.
Beautiful, Pamela, beautiful.